What's up, everybody? Danny here from Geeks of Doom, and we are back with our MCU rewatch, and we are reaching Avengers Part 2. Age of Ultron, which came out in 2015, directed again by Joss Whedon. This would be Whedon's exit from the MCU, as he is currently kind of making his exit from all of pop culture, as more and more nasty stuff gets said about him and his treatment of his actors on the sets. So again, the less we talk about that, the better. Avengers: Age of Ultron is considered by most, to be the least of the four Avengers films. The first Avengers benefited from just the awe factor, that unbelievable feeling of being able to see all of these characters together in one movie fighting Loki, and you get the Thanos reveal. But it was 5 movies in the making, and there's just something forever special about that first Avengers movie. And of course, Infinity War and Endgame, which come much later, are just these epic works of storytelling, overarching storytelling in cinema, somehow combining 20 film plot threads together and all of these characters to create this epic cinematic event, these events that Infinity War and Endgame were. And it shows by how much money they made. They're 2 of the highest grossing films of all time. Endgame being up until the pandemic, when I think Avatar took back the reins as the overall number one. Endgame was for a while, for a hot second. Avengers: Age of Ultron suffers from bloating. I think there is a lot of good stuff in this movie. There's a lot of great stuff in this movie, but it feels bloated. And I remember reading about Joss Whedon complaining about studio interference. And this movie feels a lot like Iron Man 2, because Iron Man 2 also felt like it was bloated and there were characters that really didn't need to be there, and maybe the studio was bothering Jon Favreau. And you notice Jon Favreau, that was his last film as a director in the MCU. This movie also felt a lot of the negative criticisms I have about this movie kind of feel Spider-Man 3-ish, where again, it feels like the movie's kind of trying to wedge in things from other movies that don't need to be here, and it's kind of pushing too many cooks in the kitchen. Maybe Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a better comparison, because this movie spends a lot of time setting up the movies that are going to come after it, without spending enough time, without spending enough time with what could have been the best villain in the MCU, because I think Ultron is awesome in this movie. He is probably, for my money, the best part of this movie. There's just not enough of him, and I don't think his plan is given enough time to develop. He shows up, I actually wrote this down, he shows up 21 minutes and 30 seconds into this movie, and this is a 2.5-hour movie, 2 hours and 23 minutes, and the movie opens, whereas the first Avengers film from 2012 we get an hour and almost 40 minutes before we get that epic shot of the 6 Avengers together, the rotating camera around the 6 of them as they stand in New York City fighting Loki and the Chitauri army. Here, literally seconds into the movie, we get the poster shot of all 6 Avengers leaping. Like, the camera even pauses, so you get all 6 of them in a row, and you're like, all right, there's our glamour shot. Put that on the poster. Here we go, Avengers Part 2. As they're going to the Hydra base to get Loki's scepter. And we meet Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, Wanda and Pietro. I love the banter. The banter is really good. You know, they're trying to explain what powers the twins have, and eventually it just dumbs down to he's fast, she's weird. Really like that. I love the Captain America language, making fun of Steve Rogers for not cursing, making fun of Hawkeye for not being, you know, like we're pretending to need Hawkeye. Of course, Hawkeye will have his moments later in this movie, which is another nice thing I like about this movie. But 21 minutes in, and Ultron is there. And I really feel like this movie could have used, especially with the 2-hour, 23-minute runtime, it could have used a good 30, 40 minutes of, you know, introducing the entire concept of Ultron. Like, the Ultron idea, which in the comics and in the Avengers mirth. Wow, I just combined the words Earth and Mighty to make mirth. Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon series. Wow, I'm not going to live that one down. Ultron is conceived by Hank Pym, of course, Ant-Man, who we'll meet later on in the next film. But here it's Tony and Banner kind of working together, and the idea is to create this artificial intelligence with the help of like Jarvis's computer system to, you know, create this what is Captain America, what is Iron Man called, a suit of armor around the world where the Avengers will no longer be needed. Remember, the whole plot line of Avengers was, for the first time, we see, you know, thanks to Thor coming to Earth from Asgard, and then Loki and the Chitauri army attacking, we now know that there is alien life, there's other people out there, there's other beings out there that are threatening us. So Tony, being that he flew through a wormhole in space in Iron Man, in the Avengers, he wants to build a suit of armor around the world to protect us from these extraterrestrial threats. Of course, this triggers Captain America and a debate, which is great stuff because that leads right into their whole kind of the crux of their argument in Civil War. Which, again, we don't have to wait too much longer after this. 2 more films. But this movie does so much. It sets up Civil War. It sets up Black Panther by introducing Wakandan vibranium with Claw, played by Andy Serkis. It sets up it sets up Ragnarok because Thor has the dream sequence that Asgard is going to be destroyed. It's so busy setting up these other movies that I think it forgets to give us a really good Ultron movie, which is what this movie should have been. And James Spader, who voices Ultron, is fantastic. Great voice acting. Genuinely love him, and I feel like he really could have been, you know, in the MCU we always talk about how, you know, there's Thanos, there's Loki, there's Killmonger, and then there's steps down. You know, the last movie we talked about on this channel was Guardians of the Galaxy. Nobody's putting Ronan Accuser up near the top. The movie before that was Winter Soldier. And, you know, it's hard to put Winter Soldier up as a villain when, of course, he becomes part of the heroes. So, there's that. But, you know, Malekith, Killian from Iron Man 3. The last few movies haven't had that standout villain performance, and now we get Ultron, and he looks great, and he sounds great. So much great stuff here. Speaking of great stuff, my son always yells at me that I'm a hater on this movie. I am not a hater on this movie. It is my least favorite of the 4 Avengers films, But I think that that's because of the studio interference and the bloating, and they're like, you have to throw in something about Wakanda. You have to throw in something to set up the next Thor movie. You have to set up the next Captain America movie. We have to set up all these other stories that it takes away from what could have been a really solid 2 hour and 10 minute Avengers movie. Things that I absolutely love. And things, again, part of why I love it even more now is because of how it pays off later on in the MCU, is the Mjolnir scene at the dinner party. That dinner party is such a great scene. We get the Romanov and Banner flirtation. We get Captain America bringing his old World War II buddies who are all senior citizens, and we get a great Stan Lee cameo there. Thor accusing all the other Avengers of not being worthy, and then they all, have their manliness contest. You have Rhodey and Tony using their Iron Man and War Machine armor gloves to try to lift Mjolnir. Clint trying to do it, and of course not being able to. And then Cap gets up, and I swear you kind of see it moving. You're like, but then he can't do it, and you see the look in Chris Hemsworth, Thor's face, where he's like, okay. And of course, that will pay off much later on in a scene that created one of the most amazing theater reactions that I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of. God, the movie theater by my house just reopened, and I cannot wait to go back to movies. I just haven't gone yet. They've been open about a week, but I'm so excited. And I can't wait to see Black Widow in a theater. Hopefully there's a big crowd for that. So yeah, there's the scene where the Avengers finally meet Ultron on the shipping crater, where they meet Claw along the African coast. And that leads to what is one of my least favorite action sequences in the entire MCU, which is the Hulk versus Iron Man Hulkbuster armor fight that feels like it was taken out of the Man of Steel movie with how much destruction there is. I don't know. The color of that scene, it feels grainy, and I just really don't like the way that scene looks. And it just feels, again, like it was just added on. There was so much more. The twins, by the way, are working with Ultron because Ultron very quickly realizes that, he's a computer program designed to be a suit of armor around the world. He very quickly realizes that the biggest threat to humanity are the humans themselves, like every great science fiction robot villain. But even more of a threat to humanity are the Avengers themselves, and that's why he sets out to destroy them. So, again, you get the idea that the twins are working with him. My son added this, and my son was talking to me, and he said that so we get to the scene after that where they go to Barton's safe house, and it's his home on the farm where we meet his wife, Laura, played by Linda Cardellini. We find out that they have kids. Of course, we meet them again later on in Infinity War and Endgame. And this is like the first time where Clint gets to shine, and Jeremy Renner gets his big Avengers moments, which I thought was great. We also get some more really good banter between Cap and Iron Man. After all, Iron Man created Ultron, so basically everything that happens in this movie is Tony's fault, which is why, in Civil War, he is so on the side of, here's Tony Stark, who we meet in the original Iron Man. He's this playboy, billionaire, genius philanthropist. Nobody can control him. All of a sudden in Civil War, he's like, no, we need to be controlled. We need to be put under government supervision. And his whole reason for that is because he built Ultron and Ultron turning on them and creating all the devastation that happens in this film, he very rightfully so blames himself. It's his fault. There's also, obviously, now, we have to talk about Vision. Because up until this point, Jarvis has been voiced by Paul Bettany. We've not seen Paul Bettany in any human form yet. But Ultron's master plan is to use this cradle, this like life cradle, to create a living vessel with actual, you know, like human tissue, vibranium, and his consciousness, and the Mind Stone from Loki's scepter to create this new perfect body for him, for Ultron. The Avengers, the Avengers capture the cradle with this now growing body inside of it, and Thor returns from Asgard having, he returns from the pool, which was in where Thor 2 was in London, and his vision, and he strikes the chamber with electricity, with lightning, and that wakes up the being inside. This being now is part Ultron, part Jarvis, part vibranium, part human tissue, and the Mind Stone. And of course, Paul Bettany is now there in the flesh as Vision. Another great part of this movie. Again, my son calls me a hater about this movie, but I'm saying a lot of nice things about it. Love Ultron, and I really love Vision. And I think we realized earlier this year with WandaVision just how great of a character that he is. And I love a lot of Vision's lines in this movie. I think he does such a good job helping to set up the conflict in Civil War, like teasing something with Wanda, but also noticing that, you know, the Avengers have different philosophies on things. It's just, I really enjoy Paul Bettany's turn in this movie. One thing that I do not like, and one thing that I will, quote unquote, hate on, is Ultron's plan. Very famously, Tony Stark meets Loki at the end of the Avengers, and he says, not a great plan. Well, of all the things, Ultron is like this super computer, a super AI. Instead of like going onto the, like, leaking secrets and doing something on the internet to turn people against the Avengers, his great plan is to use vibranium to launch a European city up into the air and use it as a meteor. And this just screams ridiculous plan. Like, this is like early 1970s James Bond planning. And I really don't like this whole plan. And I know that the Sokovia Accords and things in later movies reference this and make it, you know, and the things that they refer to make it seem better than it is. But it's kind of stupid. Taking a giant, turning a city into a meteor. And then there's the other part of this where Ultron has all of his, like, Ultron bots basically fighting the Avengers. And it becomes, you know, if you're going to criticize the Avengers movie, obviously you have Loki as the villain. But the Chitauri army is just a faceless army of goons, you know? And here, you've replaced the faceless Chitauri army with a bunch of robot goons. And so you get, like, the big climactic fight sequence on Sokovia, and Captain America's doing his leap into a giant flip to kick a robot in the head. And it just feels so meh because they're fighting like a goon robot army. And it's like, okay, how good are these robots if Hawkeye's shooting them with arrows and Natasha's shooting them with her handguns and beating them with her, like, electricity sticks? I don't know. I do love the scene at the end where Iron Man, Thor, and Vision face off against Ultron. And of course, I love that Vision and Ultron have the final scene together. Basically, you have Ultron, the Tony creation that went bad, that ended up trying to destroy the world. And then you have Vision, which is basically what Ultron was in Tony's head. If Ultron were a good guy, it would be Vision. And I do love when Ultron calls him naive and Paul Bettany gets to say, well, I was born yesterday, which is just a perfect line for that situation. Also, at the end, we get the Deus Ex helicarrier scene, which, I mean, eagles from Lord of the Rings, you know? Oh, how are we going to get out of this? Oh, the eagles are here. Oh, how are we going to save all the humans in Sokovia? Well, there are helicarriers, apparently. Okay, they just showed up. I mentioned something that my son had a theory. When Nick Fury shows up on the farm on Clint's farm earlier in the movie, he cuts his toast in a different way. And then in Captain Marvel later on, you hear a line about how Nick Fury cuts his toast a certain way and it's different. So my son was saying that he's read that the Nick Fury that shows up on Clint's farm is actually a Skrull in disguise, which blew my mind a little bit. I don't know if I buy that. I think that might be a retcon kind of thing and a theory that people have that was never intended. Let me know if you've heard that story. If you want to tell me in the comments, let me know. Obviously, Pietro Quicksilver gets shot at the end. He takes a bullet for Clint, which was based on an earlier scene, which is very poetic. Because they were kind of building up Hawkeye a lot in this movie, and you're thinking, oh, they're building him up too much. He has a wife now. She's pregnant. Oh, no, they're going to kill Hawkeye, aren't they? And then Pietro runs in front of a bullet. You didn't see that coming. And he dies. Scarlet Witch has her moment where she lets out all of her anger and grief and kills a bunch of Ultron bots. And so, yeah, they destroy Sokovia. Ultron is destroyed by Vision. We get the scene at the end where now, you know, Tony's retired. Thor is back on Asgard. Banner has turned into the Hulk, and he's done. He's decided that he's going to fly the Quinjet, and he's just going to disappear. And we actually don't see the Hulk again until we're on planet Sakaar in Thor Ragnarok. So that's it for the Hulk for a while in the MCU. And so Thor's gone, Hulk's gone, Iron Man's retired. There's 3 of your original Avengers. Clint, obviously, he retires to go home with his wife, and they have a third son. They have a third child, a son who he names Nathan for Natasha, and then Pietro, which is nice. And so you need, well, if 4 of the Avengers are gone, you need a new team, right? So here we get the end sequence where it's Cap and Natasha, and they're bringing in the new recruits, and it's Wanda, it's Vision, it's Rhodey, and it's Sam. Falcon is there, and you get the classic Avengers end credits, which is perfect because, again, that would lead to another of the greatest theater moments of my entire life later on. We'll talk more about that soon. There's also tons of great banter at the end. They go back to the Mjolnir discussion. You know, hey, you could put Mjolnir in an elevator. Does that make the elevator worthy if it goes up? And really funny stuff. So again, there's a lot of stuff I like in this movie, but there's a lot of stuff that kind of, the length of this movie, the so much time setting up for other movies makes it feel bloated. And really the last kind of 30 to 40 minutes, the whole Sokovia as a flying meteor sequence, it just doesn't work for me that much. So this is going to be lower on my countdown, but not because this is going to be one of those movies where it's lower on the countdown just because I like other movies more than it. Not because of this movie's flaws necessarily. It's not like Iron Man 2 or Thor the Dark World where it's just not a great MCU movie and it's got way too many flaws. This movie has so much stuff that I love in it, but it's still going to be not near the top of my list, and it's definitely my bottom Avengers film of the 4 Avengers movies. Avengers, Ultron, Infinity War, and Endgame. I do want to mention the post-credit sequence real fast, because the post-credit sequence is Thanos. Now, we've seen the Mind Stone. Remember, somebody, he gave that staff to Loki in the Avengers. Now the Mind Stone, the Infinity Stone that was in it, has been taken. The Tesseract has been taken by Thor to Asgard. So he's striking out Thanos on Infinity Stones. He lost the Power Stone in Guardians of the Galaxy. That's on. That's with the Nova Corps. That at the end of Guardians. So he's striking out on Infinity Stones, and the post-credit scene is, he grabs the Infinity Gauntlet. I'll do it myself. The Infinity Gauntlet is empty, and we are very close to ending Phase 2. The next time you see me, we'll be talking about Ant-Man, a really fun little MCU movie that totally feels like an outlier. Kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy a little bit. But we'll talk about Ant-Man coming up soon. And then it's onward to Phase 3 of the MCU. We might have to slow down a little bit. I kind of slowed down between my posting of Winter Soldier and then Guardians of the Galaxy. So maybe every other day, every couple days, we'll get to another MCU rewatch review. But stay tuned. Like the videos, share the videos, subscribe to Geeks of Doom. Tell me what you think of Age of Ultron. Where does this rank in your Avengers countdown? Is this your bottom Avengers movie? Is this your favorite Avengers movie? Am I being a hater? You tell me. I'll talk to you very soon. Danny from Geeks of Doom. See you later.